Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this session on Joy in Work. I'm going to talk about the IHI approach. So just before we start, as we go, if you remain muted, but as we go through the process, if you have any questions, type them in the chat box, and hopefully as well, we'll have a bit of time at the end when we can have a chat as well. But if you do have any burning questions, do raise your hand and we'll take it from there. So, has the slide moved on? Is all the technology working right? Yeah, brilliant. So, thank you again for coming today. If you're happy to, please just put your name and your place of work in the chat so we can see who's in the group today. That would be great if you would be happy to do that. And while you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Julia Wood and I work for the Academic Health Science Network for North East North Cumbria. But I am, in addition to that, incredibly interested in the different approaches to joy in work and how they can help the NHS be a happier place to work. So as well, and I've got some details on my last slide if you're interested in being involved a little more or just hearing about some of the stuff I post. I also co-run the Q community, if any of you are members of that special interest group on finding and creating joy in work. And I also did the IHI Joy in Work virtual course a few years ago, so that was quite interesting too. So just so we're clear, joy in work isn't the answer to everything, but it can be looked at alone or as part of the wider culture work. So what I'm going to do today is talk through the IHI framework and each of the sections within it. And in some instances, hopefully in most of them, give some hints and tips along the way about how you can improve joy in work for both you and your teams. So we'll just have a quick look in the chat though. So brilliant. So, oh, sorry, that really wasn't meant to happen. Great. So we've got quite a spread of people here. So that's brilliant because we can each bring different experiences. So if people are happy to share, that would be brilliant. So for those of you who haven't come across the IHI before, they really are the kind of quality improvement gurus across the world. And I think the key thing to point out here is that they termed the phrase joy in work. And the reason why I say that is because this is the look many people give me when I first start talking about joy in work. And I think that is because people don't really like the term joy in work. And that's why I kind of get this look. And also, I think it's because Julia doesn't understand what it's like to work in the environment I'm working with. And we wouldn't be talking about joy in work if that was the case. So I think it's just to say that when we're talking about joy in work, you don't have to call it joy in work. So East London Foundation Trust, they call it enjoying work, and others just say it's about being happier at work, and others don't give it any kind of term at all. So I was just wondering, just thinking about work, what brings you joy at work? What are the things you like doing at work? So for me, I like working with groups of people and working collaboratively with groups of people to improve patient care. That I find that really enjoy that, and it brings me a lot of happiness with work. Yeah, colleagues achieving something as a team. Isn't that fantastic when you all work together? Yeah. People I work with regularly and working with new people. So important, and it's often the people who we work with which makes an environment. Satisfaction that I may help somebody, yes. Fixing something that is causing a stressor. Oh, isn't that great when you manage to do that? We love that. doing something to help others in their job. Yeah. So, and that is just so, so important. Yeah, making other lives easier, leading people through change, and that is a challenge. And the joy in work fits very nicely within that. Yeah, working with system colleagues to do the right thing, that always makes us feel good. Supporting others to do their jobs well. So yeah, so there's loads of reasons why we enjoy work. But what I did want to share this slide with you, which is from the IHI, and this, no, it's not. It's from a survey by the Harvard Business Review. And what this tells us is that 90% of us just expect to feel joy at work, but only 37% of us actually do. So, in a way, this is quite depressing because the average person spends more than 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime, which is huge. So, that's one third of your entire life. And ideally, we want to enjoy the work we do. So, why joy in work? So, although it brings us, we would like it to bring us happiness, there are more pressing points in a way about why joy in work is so important. And Paul talked about some of these this morning. So healthcare, along with public administration, defence, social work and education, show rates of ill health which are statistically significantly higher than for other industries. So I think one of the reasons is for many who work in healthcare, we are extremely dedicated. We love our jobs and we are very passionate about our jobs. And we often put our jobs before everything else. And this is what Paul was kind of talking about this morning, isn't it? We put our work before ourselves, and all this can lead to burnout. Now, stress at work, such as long working hours, frequent hassles, and the need to do more with fewer resources, can lead to anxiety and anger, and even, interestingly, unethical behaviour, poor decision making, and chronic exhaustion and burnout. And in the NHS, we also see micro stresses. So, this is when stress comes at us in little assaults throughout the day. Do you get lots of that? I get lots of that. And I think lots of people who I know get lots of that. So examples of that can be like computer niggles, people not doing what they say they're going to do or when they're going to do it. And some of us have kind of 20 to 30 of these micro stresses every day. And because they happen so often, we hardly ever kind of stop to consider how they're actually impacting on us or affecting us and how they eventually can overwhelm us. Although they are insignificant in themselves, really, they can build up over time. And then we just accept them as the norm. So, and as if we aren't stressed enough, we can sometimes have meta stressors. And this is when we actually have stress about being stressed. So, that's another thing to consider. And also, stress is contagious. So, it's called emotional contagion. So, so the same way when you're with happy people, you become happier. If you're around stressed people, you become more stressed. So, as an individual, you can impact on other people's stress if you're sharing your stress with others. The same way when other people are stressed, that can affect how you feel about things as well. So stress is bad for you and your organization. And there is so much evidence out there to show that stress can increase your risk of heart disease, depression, obesity, and cognitive performance. And of course, those who eventually where it leads to burnout, the impacts of that are worse. So for organizations, they have for when they have lots of stressed staff, you have higher turnover, you have higher sickness, staff get compassion fatigue, which is where I don't know whether you've come across that term before, but it's where the most dedicated workers, so those who continue to help and do all that extra work, neglect their self-care and then they struggle to care for others. So it's a really um, worrying thing, compassion fatigue. You can also, the organisations, they see a reduction in performance, which was something Paul talked about, and the workforce becomes disengaged. So of course all this can harm patients. So there's lots and lots of literature written on all of this. So what we want to see, bless you, what we want to see, so it's I didn't realise you had your thing on either. So what we want to see is, when you look at this, is for people to be in the thriving area. So we want to try and reduce where people are in the surviving, struggling and in crisis position on this, and do use this for yourself, but also for your teams, to ask people where they sit. I think it's a really useful tool in order to just give some guidance. Now, to get onto the actual framework, this is what I'm going to be talking about for most of this session. It's called the IHI Framework for Improving Enjoying Work. You can download it. I put the link there at the bottom if you want to get a copy. You can download it from the IHI website. Now, you do have to become, you have to register with the IHI, but it's for free and they've got loads of great resources. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you're not linked up to them already. So this is the framework which I'm going to talk about. So as you can see from this, there's 9 elements to it, and there's responsibilities allocated to different groups. So we've got responsibilities of senior leaders, so they're responsible for everything. But we've also got responsibilities for managers and core leaders, and we've got responsibilities for us as individuals as well. And this is where the kind of self-care and all that type of thing fit in. So even if you're not looking at this at an organisational level, but you're looking at this as a team level, you can look at all these areas within your team, just bearing in mind the circle of influence. So there will be things you can't influence if you're not looking at this from an organisational perspective, but that's fine. I think you can look at all these elements from a team perspective too. So let's move on. So I said there were 9 areas, and we're going to go through each of the areas in turn. And the first one, which I think is probably fundamental, absolutely fundamental to improve enjoying work and improving happiness at work, is psychological safety. And Paul talked about this earlier, the need for this. And I think but we've also got physical safety, so people feeling free from physical harm. But if we concentrate more on psychological safety here, people need to feel secure and capable of changing. They need to be able to have respectful interactions with people, and they need to be able to speak up. They need to be able to question. They need to be able to seek feedback. They need to be in a position where they feel happy enough to admit when something's not working right or when mistakes happen, and they need to be able to propose ideas without those ideas being shot down. So organisations and teams need to try and create that environment where people feel comfortable to do that. Now, unfortunately, we sometimes find ourselves working in cultures, either at an organisational or team level, where we don't feel happy doing any of those things. And that means that harm can be caused to patients, but also staff could be very unhappy in their roles. And it is very difficult, isn't it? Because I do have to say, I've worked in places, not at the HSN. I do have to say the HSN is brilliant, but I have worked in places previously to that where, depending on who I'm with, will depend on whether I speak up or not. And I think it's a shame that I have been in that situation, but it is a fact. It is a fact of how I've felt in numerous situations in the past. So it's just something to think about. So psychological safety is key to join work, and it's definitely worth putting some time in to try and work out with your team how psychologically safe they feel. So that's that element of it, we're going to move on to meaning and purpose. So many people at work who work in the NHS, we view it as a vocation rather than just a job. Now, other industries spend a fortune bringing in external companies and trying to work out how to make people feel that they have more meaning in their world. But within the NHS, whatever job we do, even if we don't ever spend any time with the patient, everything can be linked to that patient. Everything we do is about trying to make that patient journey well and trying to improve their care. So we have that in the NHS. It just comes naturally. But the flip side of that is, of course, is that it can be detrimental to your health if you put everything into working and improving care and uh, not giving yourself any time around wellness and resilience, which we will come on to as one of the areas. So then we've got choice and autonomy. Now, this report is quite interesting. So definitely do have a look. It's not that old, and it was from September 2020, and it was published by the King's Fund, and it has this framework in here, and I put it here because it does talk about choice and autonomy and the importance of it, and it demonstrates that there is much to do if we want to bring about culture change, to ensure that we have a fully healthy and vibrant workforce. And as you can see, autonomy is right at the top of that infographic there. So autonomy is about staff feeling that they have a choice in how they go about their daily work, and managers and leaders need to be mindful of that and see how they can create that choice. Now, recognition and rewards. So some of the most meaningful rewards are rarely about money. And that's great because the NHS doesn't have much money sloshing about for that. Um, but as you can see, I've put some ideas. So um, one of them, which you may well have come across, is the You've Been Mugged, where you get a mug and you put in it things which, if you think someone's done something nice, or you just want to say thank you, or you just want to share appreciation, you have a mug and you put lots of things in there might like. So it might be sweets or smellies or whatever. You give them that mug, and then they take the things out of it, and then when they feel the same about somebody else, they then fill the mug with things they'd like to share with people, and then they give the mug on, and it kind of goes round the team, and it's a really nice idea. The other thing is saying thank you. Saying thank you is massively underrated. We don't do it enough. I did some work around culture with a number of trusts, and the staff there said we in a number of trusts, the staff there were saying, well, we know when we do something wrong, but we're rarely told regularly when we do something right. And I think we don't we don't say thank you enough. And I think we can show appreciation in such simple ways, just by saying thank you. Or everyone loves cakes, don't they? Everyone, just even if people are on diets and don't want to eat them, it's the fact that you've bought them and the fact that you've showed that. And then you can have the more sort of formal events and appreciation given and rewards and awards and different things. But there is some tips around this, and I think we forget sometimes. So just think about, if you are doing any of this, who's giving that recognition or who's giving that reward? Who is the best person to do that? And timing is also important. If it's left too late, it loses its meaning. So timeliness is important. The other thing is about making it public. It does mean more sometimes. I mean, it doesn't, I'm not saying you need to have a big ceremony for everything, but it's nice if it is done in kind of a public forum. And also details matter. So a person can tell between a rush job and one where someone's taken a bit of care. So, just adding a personal note or that sort of thing if you're given a present. So I think it's just being mindful. I know it seems really simple, but I just think it is worth just thinking about that as well. So what I'd like you to do is just think about when just share in the chat box if you can think of examples of when you've been shown appreciation and what that meant to you. Hopefully some of you will have been shown appreciation in your careers so far. So while you're putting that in, I'll share one of mine with you. We had these big kind of information boards. You might use them for huddles and different things. We had our team, we had lots of information on, and we had this kind of sheet where we would write good things on. So when something was good, we would write that on the sheet. And unbeknownst to us, our chief executive had come in and written on this sheet on the board a huge thank you to us all. So when we had our next meeting, we were on the board, and it was lovely because we had done a lot of work, and it just showed that he'd taken the time to do that. So what ideas have we got here? Personalised card when I left a job. Yes, I've still got mine. Isn't that interesting? We keep those things, don't we? And it's very important. A note from a colleague when I present. Yes. Oh, that's nice. That is nice. Actually, not long ago, I was in a meeting. It was a very challenging meeting, and I was chairing it. And someone from the meeting rang me up afterwards and just said, "Oh, I think you handled that really well," and I thought that was lovely. Um, what have we got? Recent one at the vaccine site brought in some chocolates and a card for me to say thank you for making it a lovely place to work. You can't get better feedback or gratitude than that, can you? That's just absolutely lovely. I think some people are still typing as well. But yes, it does mean so much being thanked in this. Oh, yes, actually, publicly being recognised, being thanked in the CCG newsletter. A colleague told me, oh, you see, copying you in. That's lovely. Yes, it is interesting that not always everyone engages in that, and I think it's just because they don't understand the impact it has. There has actually been literature written on the fact that when you give gratitude, you get as much from that process as they do. I mean, that's just really nice, isn't it? So more people should do it. Patients saying thank you for all I've done. Oh, you say yes. As clinicians, you do. It's very nice when patients show real gratitude for that. And I think there's still some more coming in. Yeah, that's lovely. So, participative management. I'm not very good at saying that. Oh, we've just got one in from Jane saying thank you for all I've done. Yeah, I nominated my manager for a trust award. He won it. Oh, you see, that's right, isn't it? That's just lovely. Yeah, we do get so much from giving as receiving. So when we move on to this, um, we talk about engage before acting. So it's about managers involving others right from the beginning. Any of you involved in quality improvement will know that's the key thing. If you do it as an afterthought, people get a bit upset about that, and rightly so. So it's really engaging with people right at the beginning in any stage of improvement and informing people, keeping people. We know we need to do this, but it's easier said than done, isn't it? So regular information. So even if you haven't got anything to update people on, it's better to tell people that than for people to be wondering what's going on, and listening. So really listening. There's lots of stuff written about the fact we all think we listen, but we don't really. And I think there is something in that. So it's just being mindful of that too. And then camaraderie and teamwork. So social cohesion is generated through productive teams, having a shared understanding and trust in relationships. So here's just some questions, whether you manage a team or whether you're within a team. Do you and your team provide mutual support and companionship? Do you feel you are all part of a team working together towards something meaningful? Do you trust the organisation's leadership? Do you feel leaders regularly practice transparent communication? So within the team, do you feel that information is transparent? And do you regularly express appreciation for each other's work? The other thing is how do you really know? So if you've answered yes to a lot of those questions, um, do you really know that's how other members of your team feel? So this is where sometimes questionnaires come in, and I've just got some example questionnaires from Joy in Work, different questionnaires I've seen over the past few years. And it's just an example. You can use this, you can take it, but add your own questions as well. It's just, do people feel that they're treated with respect every day by everyone who works in the team? Um, do people feel supported? Do they feel that they work in a good team? And all these things help you glean information about how people feel at work. It also helps with measurement when we come on to that, about measuring whether if you do start implementing some of the joy and work stuff, whether it's actually made a difference. So it's just something to think about. The next thing is around daily improvement. So this is around the use of improvement tools and techniques to identify, test and implement improvements. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about how you implement all this really. So we're now going to move on to wellness and resilience. So I love this PERMA model. So if you haven't come across it, I think it's really nice. I think it's nice from an individual perspective, but it's also, this isn't in the IHI toolkit, by the way. I've just pulled on some other resources here, which I thought might be of interest. And I think you can take this and from an individual perspective and look at it, but also from a team perspective and just think, within our team, do we have those? So, how are we with relationships? How are we with meaning? How are we with achievement? All those different things. So, I think it's just something to be mindful of in terms of that. And then there's also this around self-care. Now, Paul talked about the importance of this, and I cannot stress enough. It's like when when you're in an aeroplane and you know the people at the front are telling you all about, you need to put your mask on first if anything happens before everybody else. That is self-care. You cannot look after others if you're not well enough to look after. If you're not looking after yourself. If you're not if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not getting any exercise and you're not eating the right foods and all those sort of things, it is so, so important. And I just love this infographic. And again, you could use this with your teams. I mean, maybe not the financial element of it, but all the other elements, I think, just kind of fit in. So, intellectual, is there anything you need to all learn together as a team? Social, in order to increase team camaraderie and engagement, really, that, and get people involved so they don't become disengaged with the team, is the social activities you could do on lunchtime. And it might just be cake, or it might be just going for a walk. There's lots of different things we can think of once we start putting our thinking hat on. So just out of interest, if you're happy to do this, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not at all and 5 being all the time and doing this exceptionally well, how do you feel you manage your own self-care? So do you think you get enough sleep, enough exercise, enough, you leave work, you don't work huge number of extra hours? How would you score it? For me, it varies. Yeah, yeah, you see, it does vary for me, such as like Katrina there. So I would say usually I'm quite good, but every now and again it goes a bit awry, and it causes it does cause me problems, and then I have to pull back and think, no, I need to look after myself. Yeah, 3 to 4, 3.5, and it does vary. That's not bad actually for those who have put that in, because some people find themselves in very difficult situations, feeling completely overwhelmed with work and working all weekend to try and catch up. Yeah, I will almost burn myself out looking after others. And I do think it's really hard because we work in the NHS and we're in a caring profession and we do put others before ourselves. Yeah, used to be dreadful. Yeah. And I think it is really, really difficult. And it's very difficult when you're if when you're at a 1 or a 2 to see any way out of it. And I think that's the key. I think it's really, really hard. Um, it's very difficult. But thank you very much for sharing that because I know it's not I know I kind of put you on the spot there. Yeah, so 3 lately. I exercise regularly, don't sleep as much as I should. Yeah. Always work later than I should and work through lunch. And you know, all this is so, so important about having those regular breaks. And there's lots of literature written on the fact that if you do that, you're actually less productive. But I completely get, I work through lunch sometimes and I'm exhausted by the time I get home because I haven't had any breaks at all. And it is really difficult. And this is where this comes in, which is around resilience. So, um, it's very well, we've got a number of steps here about becoming resilient. And we talk a lot about resilience and the importance of it, and it massively links to self-care and wellness. What I would say though is sometimes people who are super, super resilient, um, sometimes it just causes some huge problems. Being resilient isn't always good for your health because people who are super resilient often stay in jobs where they shouldn't really stay in because they're just so difficult. They sometimes stay working for bosses they shouldn't do because they just keep thinking things are going to get better, things are going to get better, and actually it doesn't work that way. Obviously, I'm not telling you all to leave your jobs by any shape, but it's just something to be mindful of. There are papers written on it which I found really interesting, but I think being resilient is a good thing, and linking that, and you can't be resilient without looking after yourself. It just doesn't work. So anyway, just something to be mindful of. So measurement was one of the areas, and I put some measurement here. So I put some system level measures here, such as there's a big measurement around joy in work. If you're measuring joy in work, you can see whether it's had an impact in terms of turnover, retention, sickness and absence, and the staff survey, which obviously is yearly. But like they're big stuff. But really, if you're in a team, the things you can do to measure success with joy in work is I've put here, this was used by East London Foundation Trust. They just have these at the end of each day, people put in a counter to say whether they feel they've had a good day that day, mostly yes or mostly no. And I think that's a really nice way of doing it. And then it's about if there's a lot of no's in there or yeses, well, why is it, what's making that day good or what's causing the problems with that day. The other thing is the questionnaires I talked about, and there are a number of apps. So they do cost money though. There's the Improve Well app. There's an app called the Fabometer. So some trusts do use those and invest in those, but not all. And I don't. If you're just looking at this as part of your team rather than organisationally, it might. I'm not sure you need to invest in it. So that we've covered the 9 areas there. But I did also want to talk about how do you get started? So the IHI refers to these 4 areas shown on this slide as the 4 steps for leaders. So a leader can be a team leader, a manager, or a senior leader within an organisation. So it all depends which staff group you're looking at. So the first 2 steps are all about asking staff what matters to them. what does a good day look like, and what gets in the way of a good day. So identifying all those daily frustrations, and the IHI refer to these as having pebbles in your shoes. You know, those daily things which happen every day and nothing ever gets resolved with them. So you know, those micro stresses I was talking about earlier on. Now, you don't need to show people the model at this stage. It's just about having conversations with people. It's just about, you know, and you can do that in a number of ways, and we'll come on to that soon. So if you're a team though, it's or a team leader, or you're someone who's going to head this up, and it's not an organizational approach, it's important to say, well, even if it is an organizational approach, actually, it's very important to make a commitment that what's gleaned from these conversations is stuff you will act on if you can. So it's making that commitment and telling people that you will make that commitment. I think that's really key to this, because people just think, here we go again, nothing's ever going to change. And I think it's important to have to let people know, but you have to make that commitment. So it's not just about having those conversations, as I'm sure you know. The other thing is making the changes is around a group effort. So it's not one person making that change. So everyone in your team will get involved in this. And the last thing around it is it's about using improvement tools and techniques and improvement science to test approaches and see what's working. So when we start talking about how you identify frustrations and root causes, questionnaires are one thing, but I wouldn't just do that. I would also have group conversations and one-to-one conversations. You might find that some people won't engage in a group conversation, they won't turn up. And there you disengage people who you really need to be having conversations with. So catching them, it's difficult when a lot of us are working remotely though, isn't it? But it is about catching people. It doesn't have to be formal, and just trying to have a chat with people. The other thing is, I think those conversations are key, and but I wouldn't do the boards on their own, but they're a good thing to do to kind of implement. So getting people just to write on a board um, anything which they find is frustrating, because there's some of the anonymous stuff you can maybe pick up so people don't put the names to. But also it's about, why does that happen? So it's about what gets in the way of you having a good day, and why is that? What is it that is causing you those problems? So the 5 whys as a tool, so asking why till you get to the root cause, can often be a good thing. The other thing with this is you often find you get a huge number of ideas. So I don't know whether you've come across this before, but one of the tools I love using as part of this is weighted voting, where you give people 5 dots. So you put all the ideas up about no, all the challenges. So it can be ideas how to improve, or all the challenges which you've got. Either way, you give people 5 dots and they can spend those dots as they want. So they might put 3 dots on one or 5 dots on one. So if they put 3 dots on one, they might put 1 dot on another and 1 dot on another. And then you look at those, everybody does that within the team. And then those with the highest number of dots are the things which you look at. And then, of course, you use the improvement science to start implementing those things. And lastly, it's really important to learn from others. You know, there's lots of trusts and organisations and teams who have done this work. But I just wanted to share with you too. So I have touched on East London Foundation Trust a couple of times through this presentation. Their website, they've got all sorts of stuff on their website, so it's worth having a look. The other thing is, we have the Royal Free recently did a webinar for me, which was brilliant, on their approach to implementing joy in work, and it was just really fantastic, filled with lots of different tips around how to implement. So when you get these slides, if you are interested, please do have a look. Now, lastly, really, we're coming to the end of this. I wanted to share this with you. So, and I love this. So it says, one day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up and gently throwing things into the ocean. Approaching the boy asked, "Young man, what are you doing?" the boy replied, throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die. The man laughed to himself and said, do you realise there are miles and miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make any difference. After listening politely, the boy bent down and picked up another starfish and threw it into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, I made a difference to that one. And I think the key is we are all individuals and we can all make a difference in improving how much we enjoy work, but also how much we can help others be happier at work too. And none of this has to be massive, big stuff. It can be quite small stuff too. So I wanted to share this with you. This is going to be sent to you after today. And just remembering we can all make a difference, however small. So before you leave this session today, I'd like you to think of one thing you're going to do differently to increase your joy in work or increase the joy in work of others. So, and it can be as small as you want it to do. If you would be willing to share, that would be wonderful in the chat box. But if you would prefer not to, that's fine too. But when you get this, please print it off, stick it up, and write in your join work pledge and look at it and keep looking at it till you've actually completed that pledge. So that brings me to the end of my slide. So I would just like to say a huge thank you for your time today. I do put all sorts of stuff on Twitter about how to enjoy work more, so please feel free to follow me at Julia Wood QI. I also have a Facebook page on called Be Less Frazzled, and again I post things on there, so please feel free to do that. And if you are a Q member, as I said earlier, I co-run the Improving Joy in Work SIG, so do feel, do join that too. Let's have a look. I love the pebbles in your shoes. Yeah, it's brilliant because it's those daily frustrations. Definitely, I agree with more cake. Yeah. So have we got any questions from anybody? So take your mics off and we can have a chat about anything. It would be great to hear what you think, and if there are any things which resonated with you, such as the pebbles in your shoes, and if you can foresee any challenges as well, what you think might be the challenges moving forward. So I'll stop presenting, like the use of dots. Yeah. Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. That was brilliant. Really good to revisit that framework and to think about it in the workplace. I was just really interested. Is there a bit of a social movement happening around joy at work? Because I've heard a lot about it in different forums recently. And after Paul's discussion and presentation this morning, I think we should be promoting it more.
It's definitely gaining traction. So the IHI published the Joy in Work paper, and I was instantly interested in it. And I only found out about it because I'm a member of, I am registered with the website. Anyway, something came through and I thought I'm fascinated with that. And then just more and more everywhere you went, people started talking about it. It was sort of in conversations. I think now as we move forward, people are looking at it in a much more structured way. So initially it was just, having discussions about it, whereas now, such as East London Foundation Trust and the Royal Free, and there are others who are really moving forward with this at an organisational level as well as at a team level. I think most people find that they start off at team level and then people buy into it. And I think the thing about the joint work is, I know that's a big framework and it's it's got those 9 areas, and if you read the document you might think it's it's a bit off-putting. But all it is really is about having discussions about how you can improve during work and looking at what things you can put in place to overcome those. And so yes, absolutely, I think it's gaining a lot of traction. Staff like it because it's something they can actually influence on a regular basis. So I think any member of staff should be able to, if it's implemented right, any member of staff should be able to voice that something needs to change potentially, and people can have a discussion about whether everyone feels that way, and then implement changes as a result of that. Has anyone else got any questions? I thought there'd be more questions. Sophie?
Yeah, it's not so much a question, just a bit of interest. Actually, I've got a colleague, or former student friend, who's just finished her PhD in fun at work.
All right.
And actually really struggled to complete it and came up against a lot of barriers to do it, because they were saying there's not actually a lot on it at this point in time. It is very new. And has actually focused on the armed forces, which was probably part of the issue as well. But I just when I've got this information like through and everything like that, I am actually going to share it with her just to see how much it overlaps into kind of her area of study. She's still waiting for I want to say a Viva to get it completed. But it'd be interesting to see kind of what comes out of that as a result, because it is such a new area. So it's nice to hear about it coming up differently.
I do think it is gaining more traction in the NHS, but some people are still very sceptical about it, and there isn't always some people, right at the start, I put that little girl rolling her eyes, and if people haven't heard of it, that is some of the reaction you get. So I think it's very much about the wording and how it's pitched to people. Because it just by way of information, it does turn people off. And it's a shame, really, because it does. The other thing is, these sessions are being recorded, so people will get the recordings. Is that right, Suzanne?
Yeah, we're going to make them available on the Click website.
I just wanted to share with you, you've got Rachel Pilling and Dan Wadsworth in one of the other sessions today talking about joint work, and their session is so this is kind of the IHI have set this up from an organisational perspective. So it's looking at, as an organisation, what you can do. The 15 seconds, 30 minutes is all about how you can, within don't get hung up on the numbers, but by taking 15 seconds, for example, how you can save somebody 30 minutes further down the line. So that's what theirs is about. And that, again, is for everybody to be able to use. And their website, they're from Bradford Teaching Hospital. Their website has lots of information on around how to run workshops and different things around that approach. So if you are interested in joint work and you found this interesting, what I would say is, if you have time, look at that as well, because I think the two make quite a nice package for picking which bits you think would work for you. So I think that might be something for you to look at as well, because it's a different approach. But again, it's a very worthwhile approach to look at. Katrina.
Thank you. I think that was really interesting, and I really liked that slide with thriving, surviving, struggling, and in crisis, because I could absolutely see myself in the last 18 months in various stages of the whole thing. It just I'm not quite sure how this is related to people not finding joy in work or struggling with their daily tasks at work, but I've been really trying to promote this Lock in the Lakes conference to the whole team. I've sent repeated reminders to say, like, look, people, this is really good, and it really gets staff engaged and gives you a lot of useful information completely out of medical or nursing world. And I think I'm the only person from the team attending today. which is a bit disappointing. And I'm not quite sure why is that, and how to make people actually get engaged in non-medical and non-clinical tasks or activities that can then bring them satisfaction or increase the efficacy and performance, but keep them happy and safe.
I think one of the issues is people don't put the value on kind of wellness and well-being. They focus very much on we're looking after patients, or we're busy with our jobs, or we've got other things to do. And I think it's very difficult to get them on board. I think if I was in your position, I would just probably not go back into the workplace and say, I've been on this workshop about joy in work. I probably wouldn't do that, but I would probably just drop into it, some of the things we've discussed today, and just start getting people, see if that helps with their engagement in the workplace, rather than, because people, I do have to say, I haven't always been, I haven't always bought into all this. I do have to say, I bought into Joy in Work, but a few years ago, before Joy in Work existed, I would have been one of those people who would have said, I don't have time for this. But I think over time, I've come to realise how important, actually, how we look after ourselves and the culture, how important that actually is. But I was one of those people who probably wouldn't have engaged a few years ago. So I think it is a journey people go on. So I think it's just chipping away at it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
I will
not sure
certainly
that,
bring this
not sure that
feedback to the
helps.
team and see how they accept it. So yeah, but I would definitely like to engage more people. Just not quite sure how to do that.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and I think it's just trying lots of different approaches. So we're going to have a 5-minute break at 11:30. Has anyone got any further questions they would like to ask before we end? No. You've been a lovely group. Thank you for listening to my ramblings about joy in work, and thank you for putting things in the chat and sharing some of your own experiences. I know it's not it's not always the most comfortable topic to talk about in terms of sharing your experiences about, particularly when it's about why joy in work is so challenging. So thank you ever so much for your time today. I do appreciate you joining this workshop, and I hope you've got some takeaways which you can use moving forward.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's been really good. We'll try and put more information on the CLIC website so people can find more sources of info from there.
Brilliant. Thank you.